Hey man,
What's going on?
it's good. It's been good. It's been a really good week. I'm a
Good.
little tired today, but just because as you mentioned, I was out a little late last night. Hadn't seen a friend in a long time, but yeah, I don't know. Things are just clicking. I'm really proud
I'm
of like stuff that's happening.
good. Good. Yeah. Feeling kind of similar. Next week we have the big public launch, so like it's a little bit of a calm before the storm sort of thing, and finishing up some stuff on the marketing site right now, talking about the biggest thing we're finishing up right now is sort of some of the transition machinery behind the scenes around existing customers who want to switch to Basecamp 3 because we don't make anyone switch. So those who do, we're going to give them a really nice credit, and then they can change their package to one that lets them use the previous versions for free under certain conditions. So we're just kind of wiring all that stuff up to make sure it's in good shape right now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the last few steps that we're going through. And then today I wrote up an internal message on Basecamp because we're
And I read it. It's great.
oh,
Let's talk
thanks.
about that. It's a really great thing you did for the team. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I've been through these launches before. Basecamp is not to brag, but like it's high profile company, lots of customers, right? So like there's a lot of people will be watching a launch like this and will be paying attention to it. And we have tons of existing customers, and there'll be lots of people lining up to try for the first time. And so it's kind of a big moment. And a lot of people at the company have never been through that before. They've even never worked anywhere where there's been a big launch like that, or they've just never been in a department or a group where they were exposed to customer feedback or whatever it might be. And so I wanted to write something up just to prime everybody, because there's going to be a lot of dust in the air next week, good and bad. Some people are going to think we're geniuses. Some people are going to think we're complete idiots. Some people are going to love what we're doing. Some people are going to hate what we're doing. Some people aren't going to understand the decisions we made. Some people are going to love the decisions we made. It's going to be a complete mix of reactions. And the most important thing, I think, when doing anything like this is to stay calm and classy about it. A lot of people put a ton of work into this, and it hurts a little bit when someone on the outside will like call you an idiot or a fool or whatever, right? But like totally fair game. So you just have to kind of be ready for it. So I wanted to just explain that we should expect to see some of that. We should expect to see a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, and that the most important thing is not to knee jerk, not to make radical, hasty changes to anything because some people are upset about something. Like the dust is going to be in the air for a while, and it's important for the dust to settle so you can see clearly. You can see the whole field, and you can decide like what you want to do next. Because there's just always is this temptation when you launch something, that's when people are going to be they're the loudest, to start to shift and make moves, even though the moves you've already made are well considered, and you may want to reconsider them. But the atmosphere to reconsider them is a clear, clean atmosphere, not one where you're breathing in a bunch of dust and coughing and making rash decisions. So I just wanted to sort of explain that to everybody, some people who haven't been through it before, and just remind people who have been through it before that that's what's coming up next week. And just remind everyone as well that everyone's perception, I'm talking customers, completely fair. Whatever people feel, however people react, completely fair. All of it is completely fair. Nobody's wrong, nobody's right. It's just totally reactions, and we need to respect all of them and listen to them and be conscious of them. We just don't want to react hastily because we feel a certain amount of pressure.
Yep.
So anyway, I just kind of wrote that up, and I think it was just an important thing to do, and it's a good reminder that you have to remember that even if you've been through something, other people have not, and even if they have, it may have been many, many years since they've gone through it, and just a good thing to do, I think, for your team.
Yeah, and I think it applies not. And you mentioned high-profile companies, but I think the same advice is very apropos to tiny companies, even getting their first product out with like their first few customers. Like, feedback can come, like you're saying, like you can get the same. Like, I mean, with Draft, even early on, like people hated it and loved it in the same minute. Like I'd get an
Right.
email that was just like, this is so awful. And then I'd get an email the next minute that's just like, oh my God, this is so fantastic. Happens with Highrise all the time. And it's like, I mean, and those are two very different size projects. And so it's like, no matter what, like, yeah, you're going to get people who don't see it your way and see it your way.
Yeah, it
And
totally doesn't matter. It could be small.
yeah,
It's more of a matter of scale at a
yeah,
certain point where like just the sheer volume
yep,
could be
yep,
high. And if you like if you're smaller, you might miss a comment or two. But if you're bigger and higher profile, like there'll be hundreds of things coming at you. So it's
yeah,
just kind of, but yeah, totally true that no matter what you're doing and what you're launching and what size you're at, if it's your first product or your 10th version of something or whatever it is, I just think it's good to wait for the dust to settle.
yep.
And that's sort of the metaphor I try to use. And people can kind of imagine if everyone stampedes into a room, a dusty room that no one's been in for a long time, like it's cloudy in there for a little bit. And people have to calm down for a while to be able to see everybody again and know who's there and see the surroundings and be able to make decisions. So
Yep.
it's very hard to do though. It's extremely hard to do.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
like,
there's when you start hearing stuff. I mean, it like starts to weigh on you, and also that knee jerk reaction is easy. Like it feels, you want the criticism to stop. So like you're like really. Like a lot of people, like we've been changing a bunch of stuff in high rise, and we do it with a lot of consideration, but sometimes we touch something that we don't expect is going to affect some people. We didn't expect a workflow that some people have, and you get this feedback, and and it's negative sometimes, and it's just like you want to like really quickly revert and like or like let's fix it, and it's like, and it's usually a very poor idea to like do it in that, like you're saying, in the heat of the moment when like everything is just erupted right now, like because usually when you step back and you let things chill out and you spend some time, you spend a few days really chewing on like what the hell just happened, you come up with like much better ideas when you have like some time to really mull it over and really figure out like, why are they so upset about this thing? Is it really the change and that they can't have what they had before, or is it really something much deeper? Like, is there something much more interesting and useful that we can do to like solve this negative feedback? So yeah, your advice is spot on.
yeah, and I mean, the one thing you do want to pay attention to is like actual true bugs and like stuff that breaks,
Oh yeah.
or some bottlenecks that you didn't recognize. Like there's a difference between, oh man, it should do this, and I wish it did that, and I'm not going to use it unless it like those are that's one class of request, and then another one is like, this is actually broken.
Yep.
Obviously, you got to like, even if it's dusty, you got to pay attention to the broken windows, right? But you know, I can go into some other weird metaphors I was just thinking, but I'm not going to. Anyway, so yeah, there are different things you want to pay. That's why you need to pay attention. First of all, this isn't about closing yourself off to feedback and criticism when it's hot and heavy. Like, you still need to be paying attention to all of it, because some of it is going to be especially important and relevant and like undeniably true, like something's broken or this doesn't work or whatever. So you got to pay attention to that stuff. You just kind of sort of sift it out and separate it from sort of the initial emotional reactions. So anyway, and I kind of especially explain that around existing customers, because we sort of just have decided not to initially allow people to move their existing projects from existing versions of Basecamp into Basecamp 3. And I've gone through this in previous shows, but we're going to explore that next year. But at the start, we think the best way to experience and evaluate the product is to start from scratch, so you understand how things come together and how it's different and what works. If you just kind of move everything into it, you don't really see how it happened. So it's harder to evaluate. So we just kind of want to let people get used to it. And there's going to be a ton of backlash around that and unhappy people. I'm certain of that. So that's just another thing I pointed out in the message. But it's another part of, I think, of leading a product charge is to prepare your team for what happens when the product meets the market. I think it's just a really key thing, and I just think it's a good lesson.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm working on some stuff around that right now. So on the documentation around it, we have a basic FAQ put together, but I'm building a few more versions of it and fleshing some stuff out to make the stuff as clear as we can. And then clearly, if people aren't or have questions or if something isn't clear, they can get in touch with us. But I'm trying to work through that stuff.
Are you gonna have some time this weekend to kind of just relax before the pushing the button, or you
I
gotta?
mean, I'm going to keep working on this particular thing, so I don't know. And it's not. This isn't stressful work. This is actually really. I like this kind of work. This is just like figuring out how to explain things as clearly as possible, using the right words, the right tone. So I can't. Actually, it's very meditative kind of work for me. It's not scrambling work. It's very meditative and like, let me just craft this and get this just right, as right as I can. And even this, like, I think I've got all the bases covered about the questions I think people are going to ask and what they're going to want to know and how they're going to want to know what they're going to want to know. But certainly there'll be things that I haven't considered, but I want to kind of see if I can get most of it right, and explain things thoroughly. So yeah, I think I'll still get time to relax, and chill out a bit and be ready for that.
Cool.
So yeah, so what's going on with you?
Nothing as heavy as this. Nothing as crazy as this. It's all sorts of sporadic stuff. Like, so something came up this week that it has happened before, and I'm curious what your take on it is. It's simply like working with editors. So someone, a couple people have been, this latest one, not even latest, like, I had this article that I had written on Signal versus Noise like months ago. I don't even know when, and, it was one of those things just kind of like I've forgotten about. Put it on Medium again, I kind of forgot about it, and then it took off. Like I've shared on the show, like the Huffington Post was covering it. Now someone else wants to cover it. It's going to be out on Saturday, I believe, on Quartz.
Oh, cool.
So people have been digging it. It's been getting lots of traffic, a lot of traffic back to High Rise. But there's an interesting thing that's also happened, is editors changing it, and not in a bad way, but just in it just making it different. And this is like, this, I've worked with editors before, say at Fast Company and everything else, and there's just an interesting process where, like, I put forth my work, and I do all this work, and I make very specific decisions. Like I spend a lot of time editing my own stuff. Like I'm very, I'm usually good about kind of getting a first draft together, just thoughts on a page, but then I spend a lot of time polishing this thing. So I'm very specific about word choice and like transitions and like, where this story goes into this story. So like, I'm very particular about it, but then sometimes when I offer it up to a publication or an editor, it comes back with changes in those transitions, changes in, let's get this story done faster. And it's weird. It's sometimes hard to take the edits. And it's weird because like sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, like I think my version's better. I'm curious what you do. Like, how are you working with an editor at, say, Ink? Like, is there a back and forth process, or do you try and like really let them do their job, be like, oh no, I trust you as an editor, your publication and your audience. How do you do this?
Yeah, it depends on what the kind of change is. So if it's tone related, like if they happen to choose a word or rewrite a sentence that there's no way in hell I would ever say, then like, I will push back very strongly about that, because an editor can absolutely make something better. There's no question. Most of my stuff in Ink is better because an editor's had eyes on it. But I want to make sure it's still my words and something I would be totally 100% comfortable standing up on stage and reading out loud. And if it's like a phrase or something that I wouldn't use, or a line of thought that wouldn't work for me, that I'll push back on. But if it's like a sentence structure or maybe going in a slightly different direction around something, and as long as I can sort of use my own language around it, I'm totally comfortable with those kind of edits. What I've found it's been really helpful from working with editors is when they will ask me questions about like fleshing something out in more detail. So I might write something and they'll be like, Can you come up with an example of when this applied, or can you remember a time when you did this? And so they're not really changing the words. They're actually just asking me to clarify. And then it's still my own words, but they're helping me round something out. And that's when I find that relationship to be really valuable, versus like actively rewriting a paragraph or something. Sometimes I found that to be useful, but I still have to go back and read it again to make sure that it's something I would say.
Right.
And the more I think what I found is that the more you work with a specific editor, the more they get to know your language and the more you get to know theirs. I think it's hard to work with brand new editors who don't really know your style yet, because that's, I think, where you can butt heads over that. But I worked with this one editor named Larry Cantor over at Inc. for my first, whatever it was, year or two. And we really got to know each other pretty closely over that time. And he would rewrite some stuff that I wrote, but it was spot on because like we just kind of knew each other.
Yeah.
So part of it is that too.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I like that angle about just just reread it or reread it as if you were speaking it out loud again. Because yeah, you can really. There's something about speaking that like really. I mean, it's what I do with like. I usually reread the stuff as if when I'm doing my own editing, as if I'm like delivering this as a presentation, and it makes when you read it as if you're about to say it, somehow it like. I don't know, it really changes how you do your own edits. And it makes a lot of sense to do it from someone else's edits that have happened upon your document or upon your writing. That's good.
Yeah. It just, it is great though to work with an editor when you're on the same wavelength. I think it makes your pieces hum. It really kind of, you can achieve this harmony with them and it comes out better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but anyway, that's the stuff that I always recoil against when like someone inserts a word that I'm like, whoa, I would never, ever call it that ever. Like, no, but that can't live there. The other thing that I will say bugs me about writing for publication, I didn't know this when I began writing for one, which is that, writers don't, get to write the headline or the subhead. That's an editor's job. I didn't know that at first.
Ooh, yeah, I didn't even actually realize that. I mean, it's happened. I've seen it happen, but I didn't realize like that's how the industry works. I mean, that's how that goes.
It's the editor's job.
Hmm.
And my editors typically will run those by me. So that's nice. I totally they don't have to. I appreciate that they do that. And sometimes I've had some feedback on that because sometimes that's where things will sneak in that are like phrased in a way that I wouldn't say. But that was kind of a surprise to me. I didn't realize that was the case.
Interesting. I'll have to keep that in mind more. But it's because that's also been a tricky one for me because like I really try to embrace in the stuff that I write like an element of surprise. Like I don't want to give away. I'm like, you know, a lot of people are taught like don't bury the lead, and like that's like what's funny is they use that advice for like everything. But what's interesting is like that advice is applicable for a specific kind of writing. But like there's another, you know, the type of writing that I like to do is like I like to surprise people. And if you're trying to do that, if you're trying to kind of deliver like constant little bits of surprise, you can't like, you don't want to like deliver it in like the subhead of like, and which has happened to me. Like I'll try and put together something and they'll like create a new title or subtitle that kind of like gives away the surprise at the end or whatever. And it's just like, no, you don't get it. Like you can't do it that way. Like it ruins it. So yeah, that's a delicate little balance and discussion.
Yeah. It is. It is. So anyway, that's one of those things that I didn't know much about. So
yeah. All right. That's good. Yeah. I got to learn more about that myself.
Yeah. Well, we can call it a day here. I think
Okay.
it was a good 20 minutes. Trying to kind of, we talked about this a little bit earlier before the show. Like, should we do 15? We've been doing a half hour, and sometimes it feels strained. And but if we're looking at some work, it definitely feels like time flies. So I feel like if we're not showing work, maybe 15, 20 minutes is probably a good limit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good to me.
So we're about there for this one. So.
And yeah,
Cool.
and I have constant stuff we can show next week. There are a lot of small things. Like we've gotten a bunch of big things done, but I can definitely show off kind of some small things that we're doing.
Cool. Yeah, let's do that.
Cool.
And I'll have some stuff to show too.
Cool.
All right.
All right, man. Have a relaxing weekend. Good luck
Thanks.
with preparing the rest for this launch.
Thank you.
And everybody, pay attention. Next week, Basecamp 3 launches. That's going to be really exciting.
All right, guys. Thank you. And subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. I think we're up above 1,300 now, which is killer. Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Safe,
That's right.
celebration. Bye, guys.
All right. See you.